If you have spent any amount of time in gaming circles, you have heard that Dark Souls is hard. Maybe someone has regaled you with their tales of being relentlessly demolished by a towering knight with a shield the size of a minivan. Or perhaps you've seen the memes of people getting obliterated by an enemy that they didn't even know existed. And sure, all of that happens. But here's the thing. Dark Souls isn't actually hard. It's just incredibly, unapologetically, and sometimes infuriatingly obtuse. When you first boot up Dark Souls Remastered, you're dropped into the Undead Asylum, where the game offers you a handful of messages scrawled onto the ground, vaguely explaining how to move, attack, and roll. That's nice and all, but that's the equivalent of handing someone a wrench and telling them to fix the car without mentioning where the engine actually is. Sure, you'll learn how to swing your weapon and how to dodge roll yourself off a cliff. But do you know what vitality actually does? No. How about poise? Absolutely not. How about the difference between strength and dexterity when it comes to weapon scaling? Not a whisper. The game gives you the bare minimum instruction needed to operate your character and then politely kicks you into the deep end, laughing as you flail. Let's compare this to something like chess. If you've never played chess before, you'll at least get a basic instruction manual with the board. You'll learn that pawns move one square forward, except on their first move. Knights move in an L shape and so on. That's the base knowledge required to even participate in the game. Now imagine if chess worked like Dark Souls. Instead of being told what each piece does, you'd just be handed a board, told to figure it out, and then immediately checkmated by an opponent who already understands the game. That's what playing Dark Souls as a new player feels like. The game doesn't teach you what moves you can make. It just expects you to stumble your way into that knowledge. The true challenge of chess isn't knowing how the pieces move. It's understanding when and where to move them. Strategy takes a lifetime to master, but the fundamental rules are clear from the start. Dark Souls, on the other hand, doesn't even tell you what the fundamental rules are. And this means that new players struggle not because the game is hard, but because they are playing without knowing their options. One of the funniest things about Dark Souls is that it includes several mechanics that make the game much more manageable. The problem, it never explicitly tells you about them. Let's take a look at a few game-changing mechanics that the tutorial, NPCs, or even item descriptions could have explained but just simply didn't. Ah, yes, bonfires, your warm, flickering safe havens in this cold, unforgiving world. Did you know that you could upgrade them? Probably not, unless you accidentally clicked on an item called Kindle and suddenly realized, hey, why do I have more Estus now? By using humanity at a bonfire, you can kindle it, increasing the amount of Estus flasks that you get when resting there. This is crucial for surviving longer stretches between bonfires, but the game never once suggests that you should be doing it. Estus flask is empty? Well, the joke is on you because you've been carrying around free healing items this whole time. I mean, sort of free. Humanity, something that you collect naturally throughout the game, can be used to restore your hit points, but the game never explicitly tells you this. So, while new players are out here desperately chugging their last drop of Estus before getting flattened by the Capra demon, seasoned players are topping off their health bars with a casual snack of humanity like it's just no big deal. Wouldn't it be nice if your healing items got better over time? Well, good news! They can! But did the game mention this when you picked up that weird Firekeeper soul? No. Turns out, if you take that soul to the Firekeeper, they can reinforce your Estus flask, making it heal more per use. But since nothing in the game outright tells you that, many players will end up either using the Firekeeper soul as a consumable, which is just a tragic mistake, or hoarding it forever because they just don't know what it does. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to choose weapons that actually fit your build? I mean, what's that? You've been using a random sword you found on a corpse because it just looks cool? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that weapon might be doing half the damage it could be because you don't have the stats to wield it properly. Dark Souls operates on weapon scaling, meaning certain weapons perform better depending on whether your character has higher strength, dexterity, intelligence, or faith. Did the game tell you this? No. Of course not. Instead, it lets players wonder why their greatsword feels like they're smacking enemies with a damp noodle. And how about upgrading weapons and armor? Did you know that weapon upgrades are far more important than leveling up your character? If you're swinging around an unupgraded sword in Andor Londo, you're essentially trying to cut through steel with a butter knife. Smithing and reinforcement can turn a mediocre weapon into a monster-slaying masterpiece, but the game just assumes that you're gonna figure it out eventually. To make matters worse, different weapons require different upgrade materials, which you're just expected to decipher through trial and error and maybe a few frustrated Google searches. Because that's how we should learn how to play a game, from the community and Google search. The issue with Dark Souls Remastered isn't that it's challenging, it's that it's stubbornly unhelpful. The real difficulty comes from the fact that new players are thrown into a world that assumes they've read an instruction manual that just doesn't exist. Everything you need to succeed is already there, but you have to either discover it yourself, painstakingly piece it together, or consult a guide written by someone who had to suffer before you. This is why so many players bounce off Dark Souls before they ever reach the first real boss. They're playing on hard mode without realizing it. Imagine trying to bake a cake, but the recipe just says, put ingredients together, bake, don't mess up, dude. Because that's Dark Souls. Despite Dark Souls' refusal to explain itself, the game's dedicated community has taken on the role of the tutorial that it never had. Players share tips, create guides, and even leave in-game messages, some helpful, some not so much, all in an effort to help others find their way. In a way, this adds to the magic of Dark Souls. You don't learn from the game itself, but from those who have suffered before you. So if you're struggling with Dark Souls Remastered, just remember, it's not that the game is hard, it's just that it refuses to hold your hand, look at you, or acknowledge your existence in any way. But once you figure out its secrets, suddenly it all makes sense, and that's when you can truly start to love it, or at least tolerate it while screaming into the void. If you're a new player struggling with Dark Souls Remastered, know this: it is not you, it's the game. It's not that you're bad at it. It's that the game expects you to just somehow know things it never explains. But if you stick with it, learn from others, and take time to uncover its many secrets, you'll find that Dark Souls isn't just an unforgiving gauntlet. It's an intricate, rewarding puzzle that respects those who take the time to understand it. And if all else fails, summon someone to help, because Dark Souls might be cryptic, but one thing is clear: suffering is always better with friends.